Welcome back, everybody. As promised or threatened, depending on how you want to look at it, I am going to go over the costs that I've incurred to get to the point right now where I have a truck with a motor that I built myself that will actually drive under its own power, start, stop, turn, etc. A functioning vehicle built from the ground up. Now, I've never written all these down. These numbers that I'm coming up with are going to come from recollection, and I have a very, very good memory for, especially when money is involved. The numbers involved in this, but I imagine that, especially when it comes to the smaller things, shop fluids, let's just call them shop supplies, things like that. I'm probably, after I get this total calculated, I'm probably going to figure a 10% increase over that for all the stuff that you need to get, the little specialty tools, fluids, shop supplies, towels, cleanup material. None of the capital expenses like the engine stand, the hoist, the run stand, and all things like that. You get to keep those, so they'll be used in other projects. So you kind of amortize that if you want to include it in a project. It's not fair to this project to include all those materials to get yourself to a position where you can even start the project. So those are just expenses, and they are what they are. But I'm going to go through now, and let's do a line item of the bullet points. Let's call them the capital pieces involved in building the motor first, and then we'll total that up, and then we'll get into the truck purchase, and let's see where we're at with this number right here. So here are the costs directly associated with constructing the motor. The engine block I purchased used, obviously, and it was $125. Then I spent $600 at the machine shop having it decked, cleaned, bored 30 over. It's actually a pretty good machine shop fee for the services they did. They did install the cam bearings. So the block came back ready to be assembled. Then I spent $700 on an Eagle rotating assembly. Now that is all of the bearings, the crankshaft, the connecting rods, pistons, and rings. So that was a package deal, and a pretty good price for that, to be honest with you, too. The heads, I did splurge on heads. By no means the most expensive cylinder heads you can get, but these are a couple of grades higher than the iron heads that came with the Chevy, or even a low-end set of aluminum heads. Now these heads were loaded. It means they had all the valves, valve guides, springs, everything installed, ready to be put on the engine. And those were $900. Those were Blueprint engine cylinder heads. The cam and lifters, I did go with a value brand camshaft. In fact, the name of the camshaft is Bare Bones. It is made by Lunati. It does have a decent lift profile on it, kind of a stage 2 plus camshaft. And it did come with the hydraulic lifters, and that was $180. So you add those together, and to get a short block together, I'm looking at $2,505. Then the rock rods and push rods were, again, I splurged. I got good comp cams, roller rockers, roller tips, and I got the push rods from Summit as well, and those were together $400. The timing set and cover, $60. Oil pump and oil pan, $130. So to have a completely sealed up, rotating engine, I guess that's truly the short block, was $3,095. Gaskets. Now I doubled up the price of the gaskets because you know, if you've been following the engine build series, that I had to tear it apart and rebuild it halfway through because of a disaster that happened during the oil priming. So that $300 for gaskets is doubled of what the actual gasket set, and that includes the head gaskets. Then the intake and carburetor, I got a good set of those. I got an Edelbrock Performer RPM intake. It's not an air gap, it's a dual plane. And that with the Edelbrock AVS2 carburetor was $500. The distributor, I went straight Chinesium with the distributor, and I have to tell you, here till now, I'm actually happy I did, because I didn't blow a lot of money on an MSD or an Excel distributor or Pertronix or anything like that. So this is a very cheap Amazon brand distributor. And then custom set of silicone wires from Summit was $170. Add those together, $4,065. Then engine tools and supplies. Now, I think I'm grossly underestimating this actual cost because, first of all, it's not all inclusive. As I said, the engine stand, hoist, cradle, all that stuff is not included. And I never kept track of all of the tools that I bought or rebought. But that $300 includes micrometers, calipers, oil pump priming tool, the things like the the damper installer, and those little specialty engine tools you need, like a set of polylock wrenches for the rockers and all that. I'm just going with $300 on that. And that brings us to $4,365. And then I put in 10% of overage. And when I say overage, that's really just overage and unaccounted for parts. And now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I already know that I left something out, and that was valve covers. They were $70. But let's just say they're covered in that 10% overage of that $4,365 total, and I rounded that up to $450. So, to the best of my recollection, and not detailed or itemized, I have $4,815 in this motor, top to bottom. That is one that is ready to go on an engine stand, throw some fuel into it, crank it, have it run. $4,815. Now let's compare that number to a similar engine I could have bought as a crate. And even then, I'll see what I can come up with online here, but I've looked at it before. I'm going to try to find the closest example to a complete, ready-to-run engine that I can find on the internet. So this is the closest example to what I built I could find on the internet, and it's at jags.com, mainline high-performance auto parts supplier. This is an ATK Chevy 350 crate motor rated at 365 horsepower. And the total price for the engine, now this includes the core charge. Now, because I didn't have a motor to begin with, I have to pay a core charge, and it was over $400. So added that into the list price, the motor itself was $5,338. Now you have to add tax and shipping onto that. And I figured about 8.5% sales tax and $250 for shipping. That brings the total to north of $6,000. A rough estimate, this is a plus or minus 5%, I would guess, is $6,050. I spent a little south of $5,000 just by the numbers on building my motor. Now, a lot of people will say, and I've heard it from some pretty prominent people in the engine building community, and certainly people on the internet and YouTube, that it just doesn't pay to build your own motor. I disagree with that. And knowing that I did this and made many mistakes along the way and had to repurchase materials and parts, I still came in well under the price of a purchased motor. Now, my motor doesn't have a warranty, okay? And this motor here, I'm sure, I didn't look too closely at it, but I'm sure it would have at least a 12-month, 15,000 mile warranty on it. But I don't care. I built it myself. And that was the end goal for even attempting this. I wanted to build my own engine. And even having done that, even if I went another 10% over budget on what I calculated, I am still coming $500 some under the price of this motor. And also, at least as far as I calculated, the motor I built has more power. Maybe by as much as 30 to 40 more horsepower in the engine I assembled versus what this one is. Now, so I consider that a win. Was it worth it to build my own engine? Taking the want-to factor out of it, the experience factor, and the fun factor out of it, if you needed a motor, does it pay to build your own or buy a crate? A base engine would be $2,000 less than this. Now, that's like some 260 to 290 horsepower standard Chevy 350 small block, and no, if that is what you're wanting to build, it is definitely cheaper to buy a crate motor. But if you're going into any performance territory, if you want any significant performance enhancement over a stock motor, it really starts to make more economic sense to build your own. So that would be my advice, is to definitely price out all the component pieces, add them together, include your machine shop and whatever materials, tools, and everything you might need to complete the job, and then compare that to a similarly equipped engine from one of the main engine remanufacturers. And I think you'll be surprised at how much money you can save building this yourself. So that looks at the motor side of it. The next segment, let's take a look at the installation materials and the truck itself. Next, let's look at the cost of the truck itself and the other materials that were required to get the engine installed into the vehicle. Mentioned before, I spent $1,500 flat on the cost of the truck. And that was a fairly decent deal. You've seen the truck. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's solid, and the body was relatively straight. So that was a decent price for it. Now, the installation parts, I'm not sure how to title all these, but what I mean by installation parts is simply the motor mounts and bolts and things like that to actually get the motor to sit inside of the truck and get bolted down. Figured $100 for those. I went through several different kinds of motor mounts and I didn't return any of them like an idiot. I the worst person in the world at keeping receipts and messing with returns. I just chalk them up to the cost of doing business. And who knows, I still have them. They may get used somewhere else. But that's a cost you have to consider. The headers, decent long tube headers, got from Jegs. They fit fantastically, by the way. I was very happy with these headers. $175, good deal. Now the radiator and the hoses. The radiator was the bulk of this, and it was $300. And you've seen the radiator. It's a really nice aluminum 3-core. Came with the fans, and then the hoses that I needed to get it connected, $350. Miscellaneous. That would include things like the fuel pressure regulator I had to buy, the fuel plumbing, the hoses for that, miscellaneous fittings like the fittings for the heater hoses to screw into the intake and the water pump, and that also would include the cooling lines for the transmission that I got. I purchased new transmission cooling lines instead of screwing with the old factory ones. $250 there. This price is not as subject to that 10% buffer, but if it's like 0% chance it's less, and maybe we'll call it 100% chance of being maybe 5 to 8% more. So this cost here is pretty accurate. If I were to do anything, I might as well just do it. Let's round that up to $2,500. What I spent on the truck and what I needed to get putting it into the car, getting the motor put into the truck. So I have that, let's call it $4,900 in the engine and $2,500 into the truck and other materials. That is $7,400. So as I sit here right now talking to you, I have $7,400 in a truck that on the best day with the right sucker may be worth $2,500 to $3,000. It is so upside down, but I just don't care. This is a life project. This is all for fun. I'm not trying to burn money. I don't have the kind of money to just throw away, but figuring I'm going to have this truck for the rest of my life, and that $7,500 right now doesn't seem so bad. Got a lot more to go with it, body work, paint, interior, suspension, new wheels and tires, and I've got that much left to put in it, probably almost exactly. I figure another $7,000 in new body fenders and paint work and suspension lowering and things like that. Heck, I guess I forgot, I still got looking at somewhere around $2,000 for a new transmission. So when this is all over, I will probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500-$1,600 in this truck. Now I'm going to try to keep that less by doing as much as I can myself. As you have seen, the theme of this entire project is what can one person with minimal experience do? And I'm going to keep going in that direction. I'm going to do the best I can without enlisting professional help. I'll take friends and family all day long. Anybody that I know wants to put their hands on this thing, give me a hand, they're more than welcome to. But I'm not taking it to a shop. I'm not taking it to a fab place. I'm not going to take it to a professional body shop. Worst case scenario, if I don't want to invest the money in the paint, I want to paint it myself. But if I don't want to spend the hundreds to thousands of dollars of tools that I'll need to get a decent paint job on it, which it may be a one-time deal, that would just be a waste, I'll take it to Maaco. But when I take it to Maaco, the body's going to be ready for paint. So that's about as far as I will go on professional help with this. So there it is. You know, I'm halfway through and $7,500 into my lifelong project truck here. So that's not bad. You know, it isn't. I'm not disappointed. Am I, you know, justifying this? Am I rationalizing this a little bit? But considering it's taken over, well, yeah, a little over 2 years to get to this point, you average that out, I would have spent more on crap. I would have spent that much money or more on just stupid things instead of throwing it into something I want and as a tangible, real asset that can have some value to me. So there it is, the cost of the truck today. Thank you all, and keep watching after New Year's. I will have a pretty big project, well, can't call it a project update, but maybe a channel update coming after New Year's. We're going through some things. My wife and I are reassessing our positions since my kids are grown. My youngest son's moving out, and we're gonna start focusing on our future a little bit. And my future includes, you know, having more space to work on cars and more cars to work on. So after New Year's, we'll talk about the channel going forward. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you after the calendar flips.